Hey guys, and welcome back. I wanted to try something a little different and something that I've wanted to do for a little while, where I more or less take you guys through an art piece from the planning, kind of like inspiration stage, all the way to completion and all the sort of bumps in the road and how I get from point A to point B. I feel like a lot of the time this idea of inspiration and what inspires artists to create and go from that kind of first initial idea to final piece seems like a pretty mysterious journey, and I think you get glimpses of it here and there in YouTube videos, but a lot of the time videos tend to focus more on the artwork being completed, and even a lot of the time what I do is I already have the sketch done and I am just doing kind of the final stages of painting or coloring and things like that and fine details at the end, and that is only a portion of the whole process of creating a piece. Now, mostly I've wanted to talk about the sort of inspiration side of things because I think that's where there's a lot of murky waters and it can be kind of hard to explain what that's like, and I kind of want to take on that challenge to show what it is like to be inspired or have a muse of sorts, or how to overcome art block and things like that to get to creating a piece. I decided to at least show some of this journey with the most recent Animal Artist Collective piece. That is my snowy owl that I have yet to create when I'm recording this because I'm still in the early stages of planning it. When I picked my animal, I sort of had an idea of what I wanted to do, and I started sketching on a page, and I can actually show you guys that. I had a sort of general idea of what I wanted it to look like, and I wanted to do the Northern Lights or Aurora Borealis, and I was like, yeah, that'll be great for watercolor. And then when I started to practice in my sketchbook, I realized I didn't really know what that looked like. I didn't know how to paint that, and I thought maybe I should take you guys along with me as I figure out how to create the piece that is at least moderately close to what is in my head. So this is sort of my first initial sketch and color comp experimentation. I haven't drawn anything aside from other owls in my sketchbooks for other pieces or just other ideas, but for this particular piece planning, I haven't really sketched much out yet. So I figured I would sort of show you a general idea of where I'm coming from and things I am sort of overcoming or things I need to learn, and maybe take you along with me. So here I sort of sketched an owl from memory just because I didn't have internet at the time when I was sketching this, and I just wanted to get some color comps together. I sort of played around with what the sky would look like. Still not quite sure where I want the sort of borders of the piece, or if I want the animal to be breaking the border. General compositional stuff, wasn't really sure. I kind of wanted some landscaping in there, but I wasn't super sure about how to do that. And then I realized I didn't really know what Northern Lights look like. I had an idea of these bright colors, and so I decided to finally look up some reference and kind of play around with the colors here. And then I realized that if I wanted landscaping, I might want to have that a darker contrasting color to be able to see these and make it look more like light, which meant that I'm actually going to have a pretty contrasting piece in terms of lights and darks, which I typically don't do. I don't push contrast as much. In a lot of my pieces, they tend to be a little bit more pastel. I think I got pretty close here, but I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just sort of show you some practice that I'm doing, and then a few other techniques that I am interested in incorporating into the piece. So as you can see, I'm just looking up some reference of the owl, just so I have a little bit more to kind of go with. I'm not specifically trying to sketch a final piece. I'm just trying to get the overall idea and help for planning my composition. And then I want to practice in my sketchbook here different ideas that I have for this piece. So I mentioned the Northern Lights that I want to incorporate, And I am also interested in possibly doing a little bit more of a mixed media piece, possibly doing watercolor for the background, and then do gouache over the owl to be able to use white, probably incorporate some color, but instead of having to keep the background or the white of the owl, white of the page, I might be able to just paint the whole background and then make the owl white by painting on top of it. And so I have an idea to do that, but I'm also not super well versed in gouache, and so I am a little hesitant to do that, and that's another reason why I thought I would at least take you guys along with me. I just kind of wanted to show you sort of the different steps you go through as an artist to try different things, and kind of all of the ideas that don't make it. So yeah, I'm kind of just doing studies. Also, I'm going to sort of use this page as a little bit of a practice for technique. A lot of the time you see kind of looser thumbnails from artists when they're sketching. We don't want them to be super refined because we don't want to take too much time on it. We are trying to get the idea down as quickly as we can while it's still in our brain. It's kind of like painting galaxies. It's not that you want to paint it perfectly, you want to get the kind of general idea down, and if you can get that, it actually looks more realistic than if you were to try to do it exactly right. Because there's not any specific details that you're trying to get. It's more of almost like a feeling, I guess, if that makes sense. It's more about getting the right technique down to make it look correct, rather than getting all the details right. And I am typically more detail oriented in my work, and I think that's why this is a little bit of a challenge for me, is that it is a lot more flowy and kind of letting loose and letting the watercolor do the work for you. I want to practice more of that. So as you can see, I have been sort of experimenting with, oh, that's still wet, experimenting with different techniques where I more or less did more so dry on dry painting. I mean, some of it was a little wet, so there is some blending here. This was entirely wet in wet. I wet the paper, I added wet paint and kept it wet to see what it would do. This was a little bit of a combination of the two, a little bit wetter, but also a little bit more pigment to see if I could get some more contrast there and have more of sort of the night sky be darker, and then have the lights be brighter. And then this one was a little bit more blendy, had a little bit more shape to it, since I know Northern Lights are not just like a straight, more so straight line. I feel like this is a little too blended, and I mean, I also don't have the dark sky around it, and maybe I do it in layers. I might try to paint a little bit of a dark sky and actually make it even darker than this, and kind of paint around it so that there's a little bit more of a harsher line to some degree, but inside the lights are a little bit flowier. Experimenting is what this looks like, and it's messy, and I'm going to be unhappy with different things, but at the end of the day, I still need to get this piece done. So I'm going to practice this a little bit. I think if I had to, if I was really strapped for time, I would pick kind of one of these techniques and go with it, because I think a couple of these, I feel like this maybe less so. There's elements there. This I also don't think, with the way the paint sort of spread, doesn't quite look like it. Somewhere in between this and this, I think this is fairly close. I could get away with if I painted it on my final piece. I think it looks close enough, and so that might be good enough, but I think I'm gonna try a couple more techniques and then test out those techniques I like up here. I'm also gonna be experimenting more with my more expensive paints, just because I am going to be painting this with these, just to see if they react any differently. Alright, so this is one of those things where I feel like this looked okay before, but once I added some more context of these trees, I feel like this looks a lot more like the Northern Lights. Even though it's still a little bit too pastel, I might go a little bit brighter with the colors as long as I have enough contrast down here. But I think for what I do, since even this is not black, it's more of a Payne's gray, blue, navy kind of black. It's lighter, so it's not too harsh, and so it fits my aesthetic a little bit more. But then this would need to be really light, so this actually looks a lot more like it's this night sky lit up with the northern lights. So I'm fairly happy with this. I feel like I might have gone overboard a little bit with the darker blue for here, but I'm gonna try to paint the owl over it. And my problem with coming up with this composition where there's sort of the sky behind it is if the main kind of green streak through the sky is behind the owl, then you're not going to see it as much. Whereas here, if it's all kind of lit up, I can have the owl more so in front and it's not going to take away too much. Like this on its own looks pretty nice, but if I have a subject in the foreground, it's gonna obstruct a lot of the sky, and so I think I need to be careful about where I put the colors, and if I have it more of just kind of all over rather than one streak, I think I can get away with having the figure kind of a little bit bigger, and I don't have to worry about it obstructing too much because you can still read what the background is. So there's my attempt at the gouache. Obviously I haven't added any details, it's still pretty wet, but I wanted to get the paint done, just the white in there, and just go pure white, and I'll add details on top. But I like that I have a little bit of a dry brush effect that kind of looks like wings but painterly, and I kind of like that. It sort of makes it look fluffy. I also really wanted to try this out because I think the sort of contrast of the textures, I guess, since this is a lot thicker and matte, it'll be a little bit of a contrast with the watercolor behind it, I think. So I'm curious to see how that'll look, and I am actually okay if it's a little bit on the transparent side, because I do like the idea of being able to kind of see the colors through the owl and have it be a little bit more like ghostly to some degree. Have it be sort of see-through and transparent I think could be really cool. And as I look into kind of the background of the symbology of owls, I think there's a lot of kind of spirituality there, and I think it could just be kind of a neat ethereal look to the owl. So as you can see, I have experimented just a little bit more. I added some trees down here and added just a little bit of pencil. It's not completely dry, so I'm sort of jumping the gun, but I think adding pencil to add texture into the actual owl would be nice. And then I might line it a little bit with ink or something to bring it out just a little bit more. I might stick with pencil to try to make it very textured. I'm not quite sure. I think that's something that when I get to that point, I'll sort of decide. But I do think I want to do, and this is probably hard to see, but I did just a really rough pencil sketch of, I think I want to do an oval because I love illustrations with ovals. And so I think I'm going to do an oval and have the wings sticking out a little bit. And I will probably line the wings to some degree that they're not just invisible on the paper, but I think what I might do is they typically do have some patterning on them. I'll probably stick with more kind of colorful patterning, but I will likely have more of that toward the tips of the wings so they're not just impossible to see on the paper. But I might play around with that a little bit, but I think this is where I'm going to start as I plan my sketch. So this is sort of the very beginning planning stage, and I can show you just a little bit of the sketching when I get to that for my final sketch that will be the piece that I work on, my sort of final sketch. I think what I'll do is I'll show you a little time lapse of me sketching out that onto the final paper, since I typically do that before I show you. I typically don't show you the actual sketching very often on my final pieces. I hope to do more videos like this in the future. If you are interested in that, let me know down below in the comments. Like I said, I'll probably be posting this to patrons first and then release it a little later on for everybody, just to kind of show you guys this. So let me know if you like this sort of video and if you like what I'm going for with sort of showing more of the inspiration, finding reference, experimentation with supplies, and practicing in my sketchbook like this. If this is interesting, you want me to dive even deeper into it, let me know down below. Let me know if you like what I'm going for with sort of showing more of the inspiration, finding reference, experimentation with supplies, and practicing in my sketchbook like this. If this is interesting, you want me to dive even deeper into it, let me know down below. And that is it for me. Make sure to like this video if you found this interesting, and subscribe if you're interested in following even more of my art journey. And as always, I hope you have a creatively fulfilled day, and I will see you next time. Bye guys!